You're a burden. I sold Dad's company, good luck paying rent. My son David spat, his voice cold as steel. I smiled, leveled my gaze, and replied, All right, good luck. Follow my story to the end and comment the city you're watching from so I can see how far it reaches. At 64 years old, I've weathered storms I never imagined, but nothing prepared me for the moment my only child decided to strip away the legacy his father and I built together. I was in the living room adjusting the height of lilies in a crystal vase when David's BMW engine rumbled into the driveway. The scent of fresh blooms mingled with the faint echo of his car's perfect stereo system. My heart fluttered with a familiar tension. He only came home when he needed something. I saw his silhouette through the window-tailored suit. Slick hair, expensive watch glinting in the afternoon sun. Behind him, Hannah's heels clicked sharply against the stone walkway. She smoothed her hair, jaw set like a linebacker. Whatever they were here for, she was calling the shots. The doorbell rang twice in quick succession. I laid the lilies gently on the coffee table and walked to the front door, rehearsing polite greetings in my mind, only to have them crushed by the cold reality waiting on the other side. When I opened the door, David stepped in without invitation. Mom, he said curtly, as if we'd rehearsed this, only he knew his lines. Hannah swept past me, her perfume a wave of white flowers and something sharper. Hello, Margaret, she cooed, every syllable a dagger. I led them into the living room, the same space where David had taken his first wobbly steps 35 years ago. Now he stood before me like a stranger, arms crossed. Can I get you coffee? I ventured, forcing calm into my tone. This isn't social, David snapped. He towered over me, shadowing the vase of lilies I'd so lovingly arranged. My legs trembled as I sank into my armchair, its cushions still bearing the imprint of happier times. Hannah perched opposite, opening a leather briefcase with the precision of a neurosurgeon. David let out a cold laugh. The company is sold. Hannah slapped papers onto the coffee table. The sale went through yesterday morning. All the paperwork has been handled. I stared at the documents as if they were poison. The company Robert and I had built from nothing gone. But I'm still the majority shareholder, I whispered, voice small, even to my own ears. David scoffed. You haven't been involved for 3 years ever since Dad died. You don't understand these financials anymore. He glanced at Hannah, who nodded with clinical sympathy. You can barely manage this house. The bills stack up on your counter for weeks. My cheeks flamed. Yes, I called him more often. I'd been lonely, missing my husband more than I'd admitted. But, incompetent, they looked at me as if I were a relic, a stumbling block to their bright future. David knelt down until his face was inches from mine. Mom, you're 64. The company needs young leadership, fresh ideas, digital marketing, automation. You're running it into the ground. His words slammed into me like a physical blow. I drew a slow breath. The quarterly reports show the company is profitable. Profitable on your father's legacy, David interrupted. But the future? It's going to be slim if we don't sell now. Hannah leaned forward, voice saccharine. Think about it, Margaret. No more board meetings, employee problems, market fluctuations. You can focus on your garden, your book club, maybe some travel. I studied her carefully. And what about the rent on your apartment when the upkeep of this house exceeds a fixed income? David's jaw tightened. Good luck with that. I closed my eyes, feeling a fracture deep inside. 3 years of fading relevance had brought us to this moment. My son, my own flesh and blood, had reduced me to a burden. Yet something in me thawed, a quiet determination igniting. David slid the papers toward me. Just sign here, here, and initial there. Make it official. My hand hovered over the pen, I watched the two of them eager for a fight, expecting tears or protests. But instead, I said, "Okay, good luck." My voice was calm, almost gentle. David blinked, confusion flickering across his features. What I said, "Okay, good luck." "Where do you need me to sign?" Hannah shuffled the papers like cards. "Here, initial here." I signed each spot with deliberate slowness, the pen scratching against the paper like a victory march. When I handed the pen back, I rose from the chair, smoothing my skirt. "I assume you'll need me to sign these," I said, voice steady. David's face went blank. "Yes," he said finally. This is all." I turned toward the doorway. "Then I'll leave you to your plans." His voice cracked. "Mom, would you like the door unlocked for your trip to Milan?" I asked over my shoulder. "I hope the weather is nice for your honeymoon." Hannah gaped. "How did you know about Milan?" I offered my first real smile. "I know more than you think." And with that, I walked out, leaving the papers and their entitlement behind on the coffee table. The next morning, I woke before sunrise, my mind still racing from yesterday's confrontation. I made coffee and carried it to the porch, where the lake lay smooth as glass beneath a pale dawn. The lilies I'd arranged the day before caught the first light, their petals perfect and untroubled. I sipped my coffee and let the warmth center me. Now that I'd agreed to sign away what David thought was his inheritance, I needed to ensure nothing could undo my plan. Inside, I dressed carefully. No suits, no frills, just a simple blouse and slacks. I had a meeting with Charles, my attorney of 20 years, and I wanted to look as composed as I felt. His office overlooked downtown, a reminder of the empire Robert and I had built together. When I arrived, Charles greeted me with a steady nod. "Morning, Agatha," he said, ushering me to a conference room. "I have the final trust documents here." I laid the sale papers on the polished table, then slid Charles the folder marked Meridian Trust. "I want to confirm everything is airtight," I said. "David and Hannah are in Milan trying to access funds that don't exist." Charles opened his ledger. "All assets you identified are properly segregated. The patents, the real estate holdings, the international contracts, they're all in the trust beyond the scope of the corporate share sale." He tapped the folder. "Even if David contests the sale, the courts will uphold this. You set it up meticulously." I nodded, relief rippling through me. He called twice last night, once frantic, once furious. "I think Hannah has realized what she married into." Charles smiled. "They've painted a picture of a vulnerable mother, but what you've done is protect her legacy and your own dignity." While Charles drafted a brief letter for any legal challenge, I felt a lightness I hadn't known in years. At home, I spread the trust documents across my dining table, the early morning sun streaming through the windows. I could almost hear Robert's voice. "Protect what you've built, Agatha, even from those you love most." My chest tightened with gratitude for that promise I'd never broken. My phone buzzed, an international number. I glanced at the screen. Milan time. I tapped to answer. "Hello," I said. Mom David's voice sounded raw through the static. "There's a problem. Our bank accounts, everything's gone." I kept my voice calm. "Good morning, David. I expected as much." Hannah's frantic whisper echoed in the background. He swallowed. "They say the account was closed yesterday afternoon." "That would be consistent," I replied. "You sold only the corporate share you thought was valuable. The rest, Meridian Trust assets, never left my control." Silence crackled on the line. "You did this on purpose." "I did what was necessary." I took a measured breath. "If you'd asked questions, done due diligence, none of this would surprise you, but I understand it's unsettling." Hannah's voice. "Please, Margaret, you have to reverse it." David cut in. Mom, what do we do? I set the phone aside and poured myself a fresh cup of tea. I'm sure you'll find a way to manage in Milan. If you need help booking a return flight, let me know. The spare room is ready. David's gasp was almost human. I'm teaching you independence, I said softly. Enjoy your European honeymoon. Or whatever remains of it. I hung up and closed my eyes. The silence in my home felt different now, expectant, like the hush before a storm breaks. I spent the rest of the morning pruning the roses Robert planted on our 20th anniversary. Each clipped stem energized me a physical enactment of letting go. By mid-afternoon, my phone rang again, David's number again. I ignored it, focusing instead on drafting a letter to my board explaining the sale. They would need reassurance clarity and proof that the company's future was secure under Meridian's management. My hand moved confidently across the page. I realized I'd reclaimed more than assets, I'd reclaimed my voice. At dusk, I sat by the lake with a notebook, jotting ideas for my memoir. The pages brimmed with lessons learned and secrets preserved. When my phone vibrated once more, I glanced at the screen, 38 missed calls from Milan. I let it go unanswered, choosing instead to listen to the wind rustling through the oaks. The house was quiet now, but in that quiet, I heard my own heartbeat steady strong. Preparing for the battle ahead, I felt ready for whatever David and Hannah might bring home. The lilies on the table glowed in the lamplight, their petals unruffled. Outside, the water rippled gently, a reminder that life moves on as it always does, and that I, too, would move forward, undaunted, undiminished, and utterly myself. The next morning, I woke to silence that felt both heavy and expectant. Sunlight slanted through the blinds as I sipped my chamomile tea, listening for any sign of movement in the house. My phone had racked up dozens of missed calls from Milan Wade's panic, fueling a relentless barrage. But today, they were coming home. Today, I'd face them in person. I dressed with care, choosing a soft cashmere sweater and dark jeans, no need for ostentation, just quiet confidence. Downstairs, I arranged a plate of scones and set out a pot of Darjeeling. My living room, once the stage for their betrayal, now felt like my sanctuary. The lilies still stood proudly in their crystal vase petals, unfurling as if waking to a triumphant dawn. A knock on the door came precisely at noon. I felt my pulse quicken, but forced calm as I walked to the entryway. Through the frosted glass, I saw Wade's familiar silhouette, hunched and wary, with Hannah behind him, her posture rigid. I unlocked the door and stepped aside. "Welcome back!" Wade's eyes flicked past me into the living room, confusion warring with anger. "Mom," he said, voice brittle. "We need to talk." I touched the doorframe, guiding them inside. Hannah's gaze skimmed the furniture as if sizing up what she had tried and failed to acquire. They sat on the sofa. I took my place in the armchair opposite. Silence crackled in the space between us until Hannah cleared her throat. "We have our attorney on the way," she announced, frustration softening to urgency. Wade nodded. "We intend to challenge the trust." I folded my hands in my lap. "Of course. Let me know when they arrive." They exchanged a glance, one of those moments when consequences finally crash down. Wade ran a hand through his hair. "You can't do this to us." I leveled my gaze. "I can, and I did. You sold what you thought you owned. Meridian Trust assets were never part of that sale." Hannah sprang up. "You played us," she began, voice quivering with indignation. I rose too, snow falling in the distance visible through the window. "No," I said quietly. "I prepared for your assumptions." I walked to the coffee table, lifted a small recorder, and pressed play. Wade's voice filled the room. "Mom, you're losing your grasp. Tech's evolving. We need to sell before you sink us all." I watched his face pale. Hannah's eyes widened. "You recorded that I pressed my palm to my chest. I recorded what I needed to protect." I set the recorder down. And here's another. From my purse, I produced a phone and played the clip of Wade briefing Hannah on how to persuade me to sell, promising to secure her financial future. Their plotting laid bare no defense possible. Tears welled in Wade's eyes. "I thought I was helping." "Helping yourself," I corrected. "You saw an inheritance, not a mother. And you counted on me being too old and lonely to notice." Hannah was trembling now. "We're ruined," she whispered, gaze fixed on the floor. "Our credit, our plans." I stepped closer. "You're not ruined unless you let your pride keep you from rebuilding. There's a world of difference between losing money and losing yourself." I gestured to the door. "I have a proposition. You stay here, pay rent, help with housework, learn what real responsibility feels like. Or you pursue your legal challenge and discover just how impenetrable properly executed trusts can be." Wade swallowed hard. We need time to think." I nodded. "I understand. My spare room is ready. Rent is $50 a night payable in advanced chores assigned weekly, no exceptions. Take your time." They rose silently and headed for the door. Hannah paused at the threshold. "I'm sorry," she said, voice cracking. I met her halfway." "Apology accepted," I replied softly. "Now show me you mean it." They left the door clicking shut with finality. I sank onto the sofa, heart pounding with both triumph and sorrow. Within the hour, Wade called. "Mom, I'm at the rental car return. I have no credit cards. I can't even buy coffee." I leaned against the armrest. "Consider it a learning opportunity." He sighed. "How do I get home?" I gave him the number of a budget airline and reminded him he'd need to pay his own fare. The rest of the afternoon passed in a blur of paperwork. I contacted our Swiss bank to confirm the trust's holdings and drafted a letter to David's lawyer outlining the contractual protections. Then I reviewed meeting notes for tomorrow's staff luncheon at the cottage, an event I planned to host with the employees Wade had endangered. Dusk settled over the lake as I stepped outside to prune the rose bushes. Each clip of the shears felt like a shedding of old hurts. The air smelled of earth and promise. I found a moment of peace in the garden's order, a stark contrast to the chaos their betrayal had unleashed. Later that evening, I returned indoors to find Wade's rental suitcase at the foot of the guest bed. He'd arrived, accepted the terms, and begun the first steps toward humility. I prepared a simple roast chicken for dinner, setting an extra place at the table. I lit candles, careful to strike the match with steady hands. The house felt lighter, the shadows less daunting. Before bed, I retrieved my phone and scrolled through messages, emergency alerts from Milan, frantic pleas, then a final voicemail. "Mom, I'm sorry. I'll do whatever you ask." I saved it a memento of hard-earned surrender. I turned off the lights and stood by the bedroom window, gazing at the moon's reflection shimmering on the water. The lilies on the table loomed in the corner of my vision, unbowed and serene. I inhaled deeply, tasting the chill of night and the sweetness of truth. I had protected my legacy, demanded respect, and perhaps, most importantly, taught my son what it truly means to stand on one's own 2 feet, even when he believed he'd already inherited the world. That night, sleep came easily, my dreams untroubled by schemes or betrayals. I drifted off, confident that tomorrow would bring new challenges and that I was ready for every one of them. The morning after their return, I woke to the scent of rosemary from the garden and the chatter of my employees gathering in the kitchen. Today was the luncheon I'd promised an olive branch to the people David and Hannah had threatened to abandon. I dressed in a soft sweater and jeans, letting the casual warmth reflect my intent to mend the trust I'd always intended to protect. When I stepped into the kitchen, the table was set for 12 blue and white china silverware, polished to a shine, and a centerpiece of fresh lilies in the same crystal vase David had first ruined with his betrayal. I paused, tracing a finger along the table's edge, thinking of the years Robert and I had poured into this home and business. This table had witnessed family dinners and company celebrations. Today, it would witness a different kind of gathering, one grounded in respect and honesty. My longtime office manager, Mrs. Langley, stood by the coffee urn pouring steaming cups for our youngest staff member, Jonathan. "Good morning, Agnes," she greeted, using the name I'd insisted on at my own insistence of informality. I smiled warmly. "Good morning, Helen. Thank you for helping set everything up." Other employees filtered in Mark from accounting, his tie loosened in solidarity. Rosa from HR clutching a notepad of questions. Even young Clara, recently promoted, who offered a nervous wave. The mood was tentative but hopeful, like the moment before a storm breaks or a new leaf unfolds. I cleared my throat. "Thank you all for coming," I began, voice steady despite the flutter in my chest. "I know these past few weeks have been unsettling. I want you to know I value every one of you, and our company's future depends on your dedication and expertise." As I spoke, I noticed Wade lingering near the doorway, dressed in a flannel shirt and jeans, no longer the designer suit he once wore to intimidate me. His hair was still damp from a shower, and he held a plate of pastries with a gentle tremor. I nodded encouragement. "David, thank you for joining us." He stepped forward, meeting my gaze. "Mom, I want to apologize for everything." His voice cracked, but he continued. "I was arrogant. I thought the company was mine by birthright, not by blood or effort." He scanned the room, making eye contact with each person. "I'm here to earn my place again if you'll let me." Silence held for a heartbeat. Then Helen clapped once. "Well said." Others nodded, and the tension in the room eased like dawn breaking through clouds. I invited everyone to help themselves to the quiche and salad I'd prepared, and the chatter turned to light conversation plans for spring sales, new client prospects, even weekend gardening tips. Between bites, I slipped onto the porch to fetch iced tea and found Wade, leaning against the railing, staring at the water. He sighed. "I don't know if I deserve this." I handed him a pitcher. "Deserving has nothing to do with it. You showed humility and a willingness to learn." He looked at me, gratitude softening his eyes. "Thank you." After the luncheon, the employees dispersed, and I began clearing the dishes alone. Wade appeared behind me, hands on his hips. "Let me help." I handed him a stack of plates, and we worked side by side in companionable silence. The clink of china and the soft splash of water in the sink felt almost musical. By mid-afternoon, I guided Wade to my home office, where shelves of binders and memorabilia lined the walls. "I want to show you something," I said, unlocking a drawer. Inside lay contracts, patent certificates, and international ledgers, evidence of the Meridian Trust's holdings. "These are the assets you thought you'd sold," I explained. "Patents, overseas distribution rights, real estate. We've been quietly growing while you focused on the corporate facade." He examined a certificate from our German partnership, brow furrowing. "I didn't realize he began." "You didn't ask," I said gently. "But now you're here, and I'm here to teach you everything I know, if you're willing." Wade closed the drawer, reverent. "I am." The late afternoon sun cast long shadows as we sat together at my desk, reviewing the international quarterly reports. Wade peppered me with questions about licensing royalties, manufacturing partnerships, emerging markets, and I answered as eagerly as I would a colleague I respected. Each answered question seemed to smooth a wrinkle of guilt from his face. That evening, after dinner of roasted salmon and vegetables, Wade lingered in the kitchen washing dishes while I dried. "Mom," he said quietly, "I've been thinking about what you said. Respect must be earned." I set down the towel. "Yes." He hesitated, then asked, "If I want to be part of this legacy again, what's the first step?" I smiled, heart swelling. "Earn it by showing up, listening, and leading with integrity." He nodded, determination shining in his eyes. "I will." As bedtime approached, I settled in the living room with my memoir drafts, the lilies still luminous beside me. Wade returned, carrying a stack of old family photographs Robert and me at our first ribbon, cutting David as a toddler in my arms. He sat beside me and placed the photos in my lap. "I found these in the attic," he said. "They reminded me where we came from." I traced the image of young Robert grinning at a check presentation. We started with nothing but a dream and each other. Wade lifted my hand, and now I understand that dream. I won't squander it again. I closed my eyes and inhaled the soft scent of linens and lilies. Outside, the lake was quiet under a starlit sky. For the first time in months, I felt that sense of peace that comes from knowing you've fought for what matters and prevailed together. I leaned my head on Wade's shoulder, grateful for the hard journey that had brought us here. The cool breeze of early summer drifted through the open windows as I poured a second cup of coffee, the steam curling in lazy spirals above my mug. Wade and I were scheduled to meet with our largest client, yet Greystone Technologies, and I could feel the familiar stir of nerves in my chest. But this time, it wasn't fear of failure. It was excitement. Excitement that Wade had agreed to lead the presentation. I found him in the home office reviewing slides on my laptop. He looked up as I entered. "Ready?" he asked, voice tighter than usual. I smiled and nodded, setting my mug beside his keyboard. "You've got this. Just speak from what you know." He offered me a rueful grin. "I've been shadowing you for months' time to step into your own shoes." The drive to Greystone's sleek headquarters felt shorter than usual. We arrived to find a polished lobby and a receptionist who greeted us by name, proof that our relationship with Greystone was no longer Robert's legacy, but truly ours. Wade straightened his tie, then paused. I slipped him a reassuring look and a quick, affectionate squeeze on the shoulder. "They're expecting you," I whispered. In the conference room, the Greystone team sat in a semicircle, tablets and notepads at the ready. I took a seat at the end, leaving Wade to stand before the expansive windows overlooking the city. He cleared his throat and launched into his keynote, a clear-eyed analysis of market trends, an innovative proposal for integrating our patented inventory software with Greystone's logistics platform, and a detailed rollout plan complete with timelines and ROI projections. As he spoke, I saw the shift in the room. What had once been polite smiles now became engaged nods. When he paused for questions, the lead account manager leaned forward. "Mr. Hayes, this level of detail and forward thinking is impressive. How long have you been developing these strategies?" Wade met her gaze without hesitation. "Since I realized with my mother's guidance that our future depends on thinking beyond borders and legacy systems." Their follow-up questions delved into specifics: server integration, data, privacy, protocols, scalability. Wade answered each one, sometimes glancing at me for confirmation, but mostly drawing from his own notes and experience he'd gained under my mentorship. By the end, the room buzzed with energy. When the senior vice president said, "Let's talk numbers," I caught Wade's eye. He was ready. Outside the building, the sun was high and bright, Wade turned to me, a mixture of relief and pride lighting his face. "Thank you," he said quietly. "I couldn't have done it without you." I wrapped my arm around his waist. "You did it. I just gave you the map." He laughed softly, the sound warm and unguarded. "Next time I'll bring the coffee." The months that followed were a whirlwind of new contracts, team expansions, and tech seminars. I watched Wade take on greater responsibility, hiring talent, negotiating deals, and even setting up a scholarship fund for underrepresented students in our community college's business program. Each milestone he reached reaffirmed my belief in him and taught me how powerful it is to let go. One humid afternoon, I returned home to find Wade in the garden, hands caked with soil as he pruned the rose bushes Robert had planted decades ago. He looked up, wiping sweat from his brow. "I wanted to make sure the garden looked perfect for Mom's book club meeting," he explained, sounding almost sheepish. I set my keys on the bench and stepped toward him. "You know those roses were your father's pride." He paused, a half-smile forming. "I remember him teaching me how to trim at a 45-degree angle. You were always too busy to join us." I placed my hand on his shoulder. "I regret that." He shook his head. "That's in the past. You're here now." That evening, the garden bloomed with laughter as my book club gathered beneath the patio lights. Wade served iced tea, effortlessly mingling with the group. I watched him guide a younger member through a passage on leadership, his enthusiasm infectious. When the conversation turned to business, he listened first, spoke second, and art his father never fully mastered. Later, when the last guest departed, we sat on the porch swing, the scent of jasmine heavy in the air. Wade nudged me with his shoulder. "I booked us dinner at that new bistro downtown." I chuckled. "Is that your way of asking for a night off from chores?" He winked. "Maybe." I leaned into him, grateful for this new, uncomplicated intimacy. "I'd love that." The next morning, I opened my email to find a message from Greystone's CEO. "We've approved full integration and additional R&D funding." I felt a surge of joy. Not as Elizabeth Hayes, widow of Robert Hayes, but as Elizabeth Hayes, founder of an international venture, and saw that Wade had already flagged it with a star. I hit reply all, congratulating the team, then sent a separate note to Wade. "We did it." He texted back almost instantly, "On my way over. Let's celebrate." I smiled and set my tablet aside, then dialed a familiar number. "Helen, it's Elizabeth. Dinner tonight." When she answered with her cheerful laugh, I confirmed the plans. "Great, see you at 7. By late afternoon, I found Wade in the garage office, surrounded by notes and diagrams. He looked up nervously. "Are you still up for dinner?" I crossed the threshold and wrapped him in a quick hug. "Always." He exhaled, looking more like the son I remembered, steady, caring, and fully present. As we locked up and walked to the car, I reflected on how far we'd come from the icy confrontation over that sale to this moment of genuine partnership. The road had been rocky, but each step had been necessary. Wade had earned his place not by right, but by resolve. And in guiding him, I'd rediscovered parts of myself I thought were lost. Over dinner, between bites of seared salmon and sips of crisp Chardonnay, we shared stories of clients and gardens of lessons learned and dreams rekindled. The glow of the restaurant's pendant lights and Wade's easy laughter filled me with a warmth I hadn't felt since Robert was alive. I reached across the table and raised my glass. To new beginnings, I toasted. Wade clinked his glass against mine. To trust earned, he added, eyes shining. In that moment, I understood that victory isn't measured by contracts signed or assets protected. It's found in the moments of connection when we prove that love can endure, transform, and ultimately heal. And as we sat beneath the soft hum of conversation, I realized that my story was still unfolding, rich with promise and purpose. I woke before dawn again, the excitement of yesterday's celebration still humming in my veins. As I padded into the kitchen, I found Wade already there, leaning over my laptop and furrowing his brow. A flashing email from our German partners appeared on the screen. Ransomware had hit their manufacturing servers overnight, threatening to shut down production. I set down the coffee pot and carried him a mug. This bad. He swirled the dark brew lips, pressed into a thin line. They've shut off access to all encrypted files. Greystone's expecting deliveries next week. He ran a hand through his hair. I don't know what to tell them. I poured myself coffee and pulled up a chair beside him. Slow down. Tell me exactly what they need. He pointed out the critical path. If we didn't restore their systems or pivot production, we'd lose credibility. Panic flickered behind his eyes. I laid a gentle hand on his arm. You've handled crises before. You'll find a solution. He nodded, drawing strength from my steadiness. Okay. Step 1. Call our IT team in Austin. Step 2. Notify the International Logistics Group. Step 3. His voice trailed off. I picked up. Step 3, reassure Greystone. Tell them we have a contingency. He looked at me as though seeing a lifeline. I smiled. I'll draft the email. You call the tech team. Within the hour, our makeshift war room was humming phone calls, video conferences, sped-up coffee breaks. I typed a message to Greystone's project manager, clear, confident, empathetic, and hit send. Wade dialed the IT lead and laid out the plan. Watching him speak with authority, I felt proud in a way I hadn't imagined possible. Just months ago, he was stranded in Milan. Now he was saving a major account. By mid-morning, they'd isolated the ransomware variant, and our German partners had initiated a secure data restore. I watched the confirmation email pop into my inbox and let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. Wade leaned back in his chair, exhaustion mixed with exhilaration in his eyes. We did it, he said, voice hoarse. We did, I corrected, tapping my mug against his. Together. Later that afternoon, we decided to take a break. I suggested a walk around the island of oaks behind the house, and Wade agreed. As we strolled along the winding path, shafts of sunlight dappled the ground. The roses were in full bloom, and bees drifted lazily among the petals. Wade paused to watch one hover over a crimson flower. I forgot how peaceful this is, he admitted. I smiled. Sometimes you have to step away from the screens to find the answers. He nodded as if realizing that truth for the first time. We walked in companionable silence, the world's noise falling away, until all I could hear was the rustle of leaves and the soft chirp of birds. In that moment, I felt the quiet satisfaction of a mother seeing her child truly come into his own. Back inside, we found an invitation waiting the annual Chamber of Commerce Gala in 2 weeks. It was the event where businesses vied for awards and grant opportunities. In past years, Robert had attended with me, and I'd given speeches as a founding member. Do you want to go? I asked, holding the envelope. Wade glanced at his phone where Greystone had just confirmed early deliveries. He hesitated, then nodded. Yeah, I want to go with you. I slipped the invitation into my purse. It'll be good. Networking recognition and a chance to show. You're more than a figurehead. He laughed softly. More than I ever would have imagined. That evening, after a simple dinner of grilled vegetables and baked salmon, we settled on the porch swing. Wade sipped herbal tea while I wrapped my shawl tighter around my shoulders. Mom, he began, voice quiet. Thank you for believing in me, even when I didn't believe in myself. I placed my hand on his. That's what mothers do. He looked at the lake, its surface rippling gold in the setting sun. I've been thinking about the future, your legacy. I don't want you to step back. I want us to lead together. I want to learn everything you know, then teach the next generation the way you taught me. My heart swelled with both pride and love. I'd like that more than anything. We sat there as twilight deepened, words unnecessary. The breeze carried the promise of summer nights and new beginnings. I felt the weight of the past years lift, replaced by a partnership I'd longed for, a true collaboration between mother and son, built on respect earned and lessons learned. As we turned to go inside, Wade paused and slipped his hand into mine. "Mom, whatever comes next, I'm ready." I brushed a stray lock of hair from his forehead. "So am I whispered. Inside, I closed the front door quietly and turned off the porch light, leaving the lilies to bask in moonlight. In my study, I picked up the notebook, where I'd sketched out ideas for the memoir, The Story of Betrayal Turned to Triumph. I wrote a single line at the top of the new page. "Together we stand stronger." Outside, the night air was cool and full of possibility. I breathed deeply, savoring the scent of roses and the quiet certainty that the greatest successes come not from solo victories, but from the bonds we forge along the way. Tonight, I fell asleep with that truth warming my heart, ready for whatever dawn would bring. The sun broke through my bedroom curtains with unexpected warmth that morning, and for a moment, I lingered under the covers, savoring the quiet promise of a new day. When I finally stood, I felt a sense of purpose I hadn't known in years, an energy that came from walking alongside my son rather than rescuing him. Today was the Chamber of Commerce Gala, where our company was up for the Innovation in Technology Award. Wade had insisted we arrive together, and I'd agreed without hesitation. Downstairs, the house smelled of fresh coffee and citrus from the flowers I'd arranged the night before. I passed the mirror in the entry hall and caught a glimpse of myself. Hair neatly styled, a simple pearl necklace resting at my collarbone. There was a spark in my eyes I'd thought extinct. In the kitchen, Wade hovered over the counter, fumbling with his cufflinks. His suit fit him now as naturally as his new confidence did. "Mom," he said, half smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. "You look amazing." I handed him a travel mug. "So do you." He took it, fingers brushing mine. "Shall we?" I nodded, and we walked out together side by side. The gala was at the old downtown theater, its marquee lights bright against the dusk sky. We stepped onto the red carpet as hosts snapped photos. For the first time, I wasn't standing alone in the glare. Wade's arm found mine, and I felt the solidity of his presence, a living testament to our journey. Inside, the chandeliered lobby buzzed with greetings and laughter. I spotted old colleagues and new clients alike, all eager to congratulate us on the ransomware rescue and our German partnership's success. We found our table near the stage, and Wade shook hands with the CEO of Greystone, while I exchanged pleasantries with the mayor. When the MC announced our nomination, I caught Wade's eye, his breath hitched in anticipation. I squeezed his hand. "Go get 'em," I murmured. The award ceremony wound on Lifetime Achievement Community Impact until, finally, they called our company. The applause that erupted struck me like a wave, not just for me, but for us. Wade leapt to his feet, pumping his fist, while I rose gracefully. Together we walked on stage, his hand finding mine. At the podium, Wade cleared his throat. "Thank you," he began, voice steady. "Innovation only matters if you have the courage to see it through." He gestured to me, and I never would have learned that without my mother's example. I felt my heart swell as the audience murmured in approval. When we accepted the Crystal Award, I whispered, "I'm proud of you." He squeezed my hand. Back at our table, he dug into his pocket and pulled out a slip of paper. This came just now, he said, handing it to me. I unfolded it, an email alert from our Houston subsidiary, an anonymous tip that a competitor had filed a patent challenge against our inventory software. My breath caught. The program Wade had overseen was at the heart of our international success. If the challenge held, we could lose the German contract and face costly litigation. I closed my eyes, drawing on the calm I'd cultivated. "Thank you for telling me," I said quietly. In a low voice, Wade whispered, "I'll handle it." He rose and slipped through the crowd toward the exit. I followed, heels clicking on the marble floor. We reached the quiet corridor where he turned to me. "Mom, I've got to call Charles and the IP team tonight." His brow was furrowed. "I'm sorry this happened now." I placed a hand on his arm. "This is exactly the test we need. You know the business, and now you have to protect it." He exhaled, shoulders tension easing. "You're right." He pulled out his phone. "Let's draft our response. First, we assess whether the patent is valid. Then we prepare to defend it vigorously." I nodded. "I'll coordinate with our overseas legal counsel." In that moment, I felt the seamless blend of mentorship and partnership that had eluded us for so long. We returned to the ballroom, refreshed by purpose. Back at our table, Wade set his jaw and dialed. The room's laughter and music became background noise as he laid out the alert to our in-house counsel. I scribbled notes on a napkin. Gather all development logs, client emails, patent filings dating back 10 years. When he ended the call, his expression was resolute. We rejoined the gala festivities, though the tension clung to us like a second skin. When the final dance began, Wade extended his hand. "May I have this dance?" I rose, smoothing my dress. Under the dim lights and swirling couples, we moved in quiet harmony. No words were needed. Our steps spoke of shared triumphs and challenges still to come. As the night ended and we rode home in hushed relief, Wade reached across and squeezed my hand. "Tomorrow we fight back," he said. I smiled, exhaustion and excitement coiling together. Tomorrow we win. The house was dark when we arrived, but inside, the lilies still glowed softly in their vase, witnesses to our victories and to the battles that remained. I took one last look at the award on the mantel, then turned to Wade, brushing a loose strand of hair from his forehead. "Thank you for dancing with me." He leaned in, pressing a quick kiss to my temple. "Thank you for guiding me." As I climbed the stairs to sleep, I carried with me the rhythm of that dance, steady, intentional steps taken together toward a future we would face as partners, mother and son, mentors, and allies, united by respect, earned, and love reaffirmed. When dawn broke the next morning, I was already at my desk, fresh cup of chamomile tea in hand, reviewing the overnight email from our Tokyo office. They'd secured an extension on the patent challenge deadline. It bought us a day, an extra 24 hours to gather evidence and craft our defense. The early sunlight glimmered on my notes and on the edge of the crystal award still resting on the mantel, reminding me that this victory, like so many before, must be earned anew. I heard the front door click and looked up to see Wade stepping in, phone pressed to his ear. His eyes widened briefly, then softened as he recognized my gaze. He clicked off the call. "That was Charles," he said, sliding into the chair beside me. "He's lining up our technical team for a 3-hour video conference with Japanese counsel this afternoon." He ran a hand through his hair. "We'll need every development log from the past 5 years." I nodded, already pulling the binder marked R&D timeline from the shelf. "I'll have Helen send the patents folder and the email threads you flagged." He reached across to squeeze my arm. "Thank you." I tucked a loose strand of hair behind my ear. "Let's do this together like we did Greystone's ransomware crisis." Wade smiled, a weary but determined curve of his lips. "Exactly." He stood and headed for the door. I'll handle the calls to our Austin IT manager and the compliance officer. Then I'll join the meeting here. I watched him go, a familiar surge of pride warming my chest. By mid-morning, the living room had transformed into our headquarters laptops, opened binders, stacked conference calls, already in progress. I sat between Wade and Helen as the Japanese counsel outlined the legal standard for patent validity. Ultra-fast flashes of technical jargon filled the air, encryption algorithms, prior art searches, jurisdictional nuances, but Wade translated each term for me and Helen, ensuring we all stayed on the same page. When the call ended, Helen exhaled. "That was grueling," she said. "But we have a roadmap." I tapped my pen against the binder. "Now we follow it." Wade nodded, pulling his suit jacket back on. "I'll fly to Houston tomorrow to present our case in person. Face-to-face may sway their board faster than documents alone." I hesitated, then met his eyes. "Take me with you." His brow lifted in surprise. "Mom, I held up a hand. "I've earned the right, and I want to stand by you." He exhaled, decision made. "All right, let's do it together." That afternoon, we boarded a late flight to Houston. The hum of the jet engines and the low cabin lights felt both comforting and charged with anticipation. I leaned against Wade, whispering, "Remember when you thought I was too old to understand tech?" He chuckled softly. "Yes," he replied, voice barely above a breath. How wrong I was. In Houston, the courthouse lobby buzzed with lawyers tapping tablets and clutching briefs. Our counsel led us through metal detectors, their faces calm but resolute. Wade and I shared a look. This was our moment to prove we belonged here, not as adversaries, but as co-defendants in trust for Meridian Trust. Inside the hearing room, we found the judge seated behind a high bench, flanked by counsel for Stewart Industries, the competitor behind the challenge. Their lead attorney glanced at us, a practiced half-smile playing on his lips. I recognized him from our early days, someone who'd once courted a merger proposal. He looked surprised to see me at Wade's side. When the judge called the session to order, Wade stood to present our defense. He spoke with clarity and confidence, how Meridian Trust held the patents, how our R&D logs predated Stewart's claims, how our Japanese and German partners had licensed the technology under binding contracts. Each point was supported by slide decks and sworn affidavits. I watched from my seat, heart swelling with pride at his balance of technical know-how and personal conviction. Then it was my turn. I rose feeling the weight of inherited credibility and freshly earned authority. Your Honor, I began as the founder and sole trust beneficiary. I oversaw every major R&D decision for the last decade. My son's leadership in recent years has been exemplary. He's not only embraced innovation, but also honored the integrity of our patents. I detailed how the trust ensured perpetual stewardship of these assets. I felt a quiet power in speaking my truth, knowing every word rang with years of stewardship and sacrifice. The court reporter's fingers flew over keys as I finished. In the hush that followed, even Stewart's attorneys looked thoughtful. The judge nodded. I will review the submitted documents and hear final arguments next week. We left the courtroom into the late afternoon sunshine. Wade exhaled deeply. I'll meet you at the hotel, he asked. I nodded. I'll be there. He hugged me quickly before striding off. Businessman, first son, always. In the hotel room, I sank onto the bed, exhaustion mingling with relief. Wade joined me minutes later, tossing his jacket onto a chair. He flopped down on the bed beside me. You were brilliant, he said earnestly. I've never been more proud. I turned to face him. We're a team. He reached out, brushing my cheek. You taught me the value of wisdom and resilience lessons no business school can offer. We lay there in companionable silence, listening to the city's distant traffic hum. Outside, the sun dipped toward the horizon, painting the skyline gold. I closed my eyes, savoring the moment, the culmination of betrayal and redemption, the melding of fear and triumph. I felt the solid reality of our partnership, a son who'd once forsaken me, now guarding our family's legacy with me at his side. As twilight deepened, Wade slipped from the bed, smoothing his shirt. "I'm going to grab coffee downstairs," he said. I nodded. "I'll join you." He hesitated, then asked softly, "Can I stay in your room tonight?" I smiled, heart full. "Absolutely." He bent to kiss my forehead before leaving. I watched the door close and whispered, "Good luck tomorrow," to the empty room. I knew tomorrow would bring further challenges, but for the first time, I faced them not as a solitary defender of a hidden trust, but as part of a team, mother and son, partners, in every sense, ready to protect what truly mattered. The hotel's morning light filtered through the blackout curtains as I stirred awake the faint hum of city traffic below, carrying a promise of today's final hearing. Wade was already dressed in his navy suit, the one he'd chosen for confidence's sake. I found him kneeling beside the window, studying the Houston skyline as if it held answers. "Ready?" I asked softly. He turned eyes bright but tense. More than ever, he replied. We moved through breakfast with purpose. Steel-cut oatmeal, fresh berries, strong coffee, then gathered our files and headed back to the courthouse. The lobby was quieter than yesterday, as if everyone sensed the climax approaching. We nodded a silent greeting to the bailiff, then ascended the marble steps once more. In room 312, the judge sat behind the bench flanked by counsel for Stewart Industries and our Meridian Trust team. Stewart's lead attorney rose first. Baton of evidence in hand, he argued that our patents overlapped with his client's recent innovations, that international licensing agreements were void because their enabling statutes had been misinterpreted. His voice was polished, his tone certain. I watched Wade's jaw tighten, then relax as he met my gaze, a silent cue. We knew our truth. When it was our turn, Wade stood shoulders square. He presented our technical timelines, coded entries, showing each phase of development, and pointed out the patent's unique claims, distinct from anything Stewart held. He spoke of data logs test results and licensing revenue streams. I could tell the room leaned in. Even the steely glare of Stewart's counsel faltered. Then I rose, stepping past Wade to reach the podium. My voice carried years of conviction. Your Honor, the foundation of this challenge rests on misunderstanding. Meridian Trust holds these patents legitimately and exclusively. I outlined the trust's genesis, how Robert and I had structured our holdings to safeguard innovation, and emphasized the court's duty to uphold properly maintained intellectual property. I watched the judge's pen dance over notes, his attention unwavering. After closing statements, the judge announced a brief recess before rendering his decision. We retreated to the hallway, where Wade exhaled, rubbing his temples. I think we did everything we could, he said quietly. I nodded, slipping my arm around his waist. Win or lose, I'm proud of you. He managed a small smile. Thank you. When the bailiff returned, we filed back inside. The judge reviewed his notes, then looked up. Having considered all evidence this court finds in favor of Meridian Trust, the challenge to the patents is dismissed. A collective sigh filled the room. Wade's eyes glistened. I felt tears sting mine. The judge continued. Furthermore, the equitable interests of Meridian Trust shall remain inviolate." With that gavel struck and the room erupted into restrained applause. Outside, the afternoon sun was bright, the air shimmering. Wade turned to me, voice trembling. "We won." I smiled, pulling him into a hug so tight that we both tumbled into laughter. Staff members approached to offer congratulations. Helen Clara, even Stewart's junior counsel, who managed a respectful nod. I felt the warmth of solidarity I hadn't known through those months of betrayal. Back at the hotel, the award crystal caught the light on the dresser. Wade lifted it, spinning it in his hands. "This belongs here," he said, setting it beside the one from Greystone. "But the real victory," he added, turning to me, "is what we built together." I stepped forward, placing my hand over his on the award's base. Together, I agreed. That evening we boarded our flight home, weary but triumphant. I leaned my head against the window, watching city lights fade beneath us, and thought of the journey, how I'd weathered my son's betrayal, protected our company's legacy, and found a partnership I'd only dreamed of. Wade rested his head on my shoulder, breathing steady. "Thank you for never giving up on me," he whispered. I kissed his temple. "Thank you for not giving up on us." When the plane touched down, the familiar hush of our hometown felt comforting. We drove through quiet streets lined with oaks and maples, their leaves whispering overhead. Pulling into the driveway, Wade shut off the engine and turned to face me. "I'll take the spare room again," he said with a grin that held both humility and affection. I unlocked the door and ushered him inside. "Only if you promise to help me prune the roses tomorrow," I teased. He laughed, relief and joy lighting his eyes. "It's a deal." That night, I wandered through the house, pausing in each room. The living room where our confrontation unfolded, the study where we defended our patents, and now the guest room where my son would sleep. This house was the tapestry of our lives, stitched with trials and triumphs. I smiled, heart full of gratitude for what we'd endured and conquered. In my bedroom, I sat by the window, pen in hand, returning to my memoir draft. I wrote the final lines. "True legacy isn't what we leave behind, it's the respect, trust, and love we forge with those who follow us." Outside, the night was quiet, stars shimmering overhead. I closed my journal, feeling both completion and possibility. Our story wasn't over. It was just beginning its next chapter together. Morning light filtered through the lace curtains. As I stirred awake, the weight of the past year's storms settling into quiet pride. Today was the grand reopening of our renovated headquarters, an event Robert had dreamed of before he died, and one Wade and I had fought to safeguard. The oak-lined driveway gleamed beneath a canopy of white lanterns, and I dressed with care, a soft gray suit that felt like armor tempered by comfort. My heart fluttered with anticipation. This was our shared triumph on full display. Downstairs, Wade was already in the kitchen, meticulously arranging fresh lilacs in slender glass vases. He looked up and smiled, the first genuine curve I'd seen in days. "Good morning," he said, voice warm. I sipped my tea and nodded. "You're up early." He gestured to the flowers. "I wanted everything perfect. Today is as much your day as it is the company's." I crossed the room and wrapped him in a quick embrace. "Thank you," I whispered, "for everything." He squeezed my shoulders. We did this together. At the ribbon-lined entrance, employees gathered, some with families, others clutching small bouquets. Helen, ever composed, handed me a clipboard of talking points. Clara and Jonathan hovered by the podium, rehearsing their roles in the unveiling ceremony. The air hummed with excitement and gratitude. It felt like a living testament to perseverance and partnership. I stepped up to the podium as Wade cut the red ribbon with ceremonial scissors. Flashbulbs popped and applause rippled through the crowd. I lifted the microphone. "Welcome," I began, voice steady. "This building stands for innovation, resilience, and the strength of community. My husband Robert believed in each of these ideals, and it is my honor, alongside my son Wade, to carry his vision forward." I gestured toward the gleaming facade. Today, we celebrate not just a reopening, but a new chapter, one defined by integrity, respect, and the knowledge that legacy is built through shared struggle and solidarity. Applause followed, resonant and sincere. After the official remarks, guests moved inside, marveling at the restored marble floors and modern tech showcases. Wade guided the mayor to the interactive kiosk I'd designed, while I mingled with longtime clients who'd weathered the early days with us. Each handshake and thank you felt like a stitch in the tapestry we'd rebuilt. Midway through the tour, Wade found me in the innovation lab. He pointed to a team of young engineers presenting a prototype drone for warehouse inventory. "This is what you taught me," he said softly, "to empower new ideas, not just guard old ones." I smiled, watching the engineers demonstrate automated shelf scanning. "This is your influence, Wade, your dedication to growth." He turned serious. "Mom, there's something else." He handed me a small envelope. Inside was a letter from Greystone's CEO, a multi-year contract extension, doubling our previous scope. They credit our swift response to the ransomware incident and our unwavering defense during the patent challenge, Wade explained. They said they'd never seen a partnership like ours. Tears pricked my eyes. "That's remarkable." He brushed a loose strand of hair back. "It's our legacy now, one you've entrusted to me." I reached for his hand. "Thank you for proving yourself worthy." As the afternoon sun slanted through the windows, Wade guided me to the rooftop garden, a greenhouse Robert had envisioned but never built. It stood lush with herbs, vegetables, and flowering vines, all nourished by our employees in their Green Thumb workshops. I inhaled the scent of basil and jasmine, feeling the culmination of years' work in every leaf. Wade handed me a wicker basket. "Shall we pick something for tomorrow's staff luncheon?" I nodded, letting him lead me between raised beds. We paused to admire a cluster of heirloom tomatoes. "These are perfect," I said, plucking the ripest handful. He selected fresh mint and thyme humming as he worked. In that moment, I saw the full circle of our journey, from betrayal and distrust to collaboration and growth. When evening arrived, guests gathered again for a celebratory toast. I stood beside Wade, flutes of champagne raised. To Robert, I began voice clear, "To vision and courage." Wade lowered his glass. "To the future," he added. Together, we drank the crystal flutes, ringing with possibility. Later, as the crowd thinned, I found Wade by the reflecting pool in the courtyard. Lights danced on the water's surface, and a breeze rustled the lanterns. He turned to me, eyes bright. "Mom, do you remember when I first showed you that plastic flower?" he asked, referencing the old hurt that once skewed our bond. I nodded, hand over my heart. "How could I forget?" He paused, searching my face. "I was so blind." "You were right to protect yourself, and I was right to learn from you." He stepped closer. "Thank you for not giving up on me even when I called you a burden." I took his hands in mine. "I never stopped believing in you. Love sometimes means letting people fall so they can stand taller." We stood there bound by unspoken gratitude. When the last lantern dimmed, we walked back inside hand in hand. The building that had once been a battleground now felt like home, a living legacy of trust, resilience, and the transformational power of family. As I climbed the stairs to my office, I paused by the awards shelf. Side by side stood the Innovation in Technology Award and the Patent Defense Commendation trophies of battles hard won. I sat at my desk opening a fresh journal and writing the final entry of the memoir I'd begun months ago. I penned true legacy is forged in compassion, courage, and the willingness to stand together. A mother's gift is not only in providing, but in empowering her child to rise sometimes from her own shadow to shine anew. I closed the journal, heart full. Outside, the city lights blinked in the gathering dusk, a testament to unending possibility. I switched off my desk lamp and headed home, back to the place where our story began and where its next chapters would unfold written side by side.